You are listening to the Final Say Radio Show, a Rappaport media production, with your host Brett Rappaport and co-host John Rappaport.
All right. Well, without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, we have Travis Korson, our good friend, who is the principal at Millennial Strategy Group. And, of course, you can go to millennialdc.com to check them out. Travis, it's great to have you. I think some of the stuff that you've given us in preparation for today is just absolutely incredible. We've been discussing this since it happened, and even before that, we've questioned a lot of security issues with this administration. But this is just deeper and more scandalous than we had imagined, and you've raised some great points here. So thank you for joining us today, Travis.
Thanks. Glad to be here.
So we have would be a very minimal dump of emails by the White House, I'm sure carefully selected, but we've learned some new things here, haven't we?
Yes, so what we received yesterday from the White House is about 100 pages of emails regarding the talking points that were used by Susan Rice on the Sunday shows, where she accused the attacks on Benghazi being caused by a video which depicts Muhammad in a very unflattering light. Now, there were 5 major players in this. Mike Morrell, who's the CIA Deputy Director, Victoria Nuland, State Department spokesman, David Petraeus, former CIA Director, Jake Sullivan, who at the time was Deputy Chief of Staff to Hillary Clinton, and Tommy Vietor, who was the former National Security Council spokesman. If you look between the two drafts of talking points, there are a lot of very interesting things that were removed, specifically references to Al-Qaeda, Ansar al-Sharia, previous attacks in Benghazi that had occurred on foreign interests, 5 of them, I believe, and a cable from Washington to the U.S. Embassy in Cairo 10 days before the Benghazi attack warning of potential violence were all removed from the talking points. Now, these changes really came in 3 waves. First, internally at the CIA, which was after email feedback from top Obama administration officials and during a meeting of high-ranking intel officials the following morning. What's important about this is that it really shows several lies that came out of the Obama administration. The first being that the White House and State Department, Jay Carney claimed, had a minimal role in editing the talking points. But if you look through these emails, you see that there was actually very, very extensive editing of the talking points from the request of Victoria Nuland, who had expressed major reservations to the talking points. And there's actually no mention of this YouTube video on the email traffic until a brief mention in the subject line of one email. So it's very interesting how they go from the first draft to the final draft, which even the final draft does not mention the YouTube video, to Susan Rice going on the Sunday talk shows and saying that it was caused by this video.
So this leads to several questions. First of all, up till now it seems that the media and a lot of people are playing this off as, well, it's just conservatives and Republicans trying to attack the administration on, the way it was handled after an incident happened. But when we're finding out here that we were warned before this attack, and Travis, you and I know, we're all aware that there have been many incidents in Libya at both the embassy and near the consulate of car bombings and grenades being thrown, or just different occurrences that led you to believe that it was a very dangerous, very touchy situation, and that if any place on earth that we needed increased security, it was at these 2 places.
Oh, most certainly. One of the things that I would have loved to have seen when President Obama was giving that press conference with the British Prime Minister recently is a question from the press or to the British Prime Minister about his thoughts, considering that the United Kingdom had knowledge of the danger of Libya for some time and had been removing assets from the area for some time due to the high security risks. It's just crazy to think that there was no warnings there, and really leads me to believe, for a number of reasons, that I think, especially with Victoria Nuland's reservations, that there was some sort of a cover-up on the part of the State Department.
Yeah, I mean, and then it leads us to our next question. And and by the way, it was the British ambassador who I believe there was an assassination attempt on his life, correct?
Correct, on his convoy. When he was moving through Benghazi, there was an attempt to attack his convoy.
Right. So I mean, hint, But the question is, why was Hillary Clinton so intent on Ambassador Chris Stevens going back to Benghazi? I mean, I don't understand what they were up to, what they were trying to accomplish by doing whatever it is they were working on. And evidently, I mean, we've had discussions of were there weapons flowing from there into other places in North Africa and the Middle East. What is the whole story behind this? And, of course, why would they be covering this up for so long and just still sticking by the storyline?
Sure. It's absolutely crazy, why they sent the Ambassador Stevens there to a compound with light fortifications on an anniversary of something that, September 11th, the attack on America, an anniversary that causes increased activity from Islamic extremists. I think one of the most important things that hasn't really been discussed, and one of the reasons why I think the State Department was so interested in covering this up is the security and the group that they used to secure the compound. The group that secured the Benghazi diplomatic post was a group called the February 17th Martyrs Brigade. They actually spun off Ansar al-Sharia, which literally in English means supporters of Islamic law, and they've been known to now be an al-Qaeda-linked militia. This is actually something that was in the initial talking points and something that was removed at the request of Victoria Nuland due to these major reservations that she was speaking about. Now, it's very interesting that the State Department would hire this local militia without proper vetting, because this is a region, Benghazi is actually, that has sent more men per capita to Iraq to fight against the Americans than anywhere else in the world. Now, there were indications for a couple days leading up to this that there was going to be there were some serious issues with the security situation. On September 8th, 3 days before the attack happened on the compound, the State Department was told that the Martyrs Brigade, the February 17th Martyrs Brigade, would no longer support U.S. movements in the city, including those related to the upcoming visit by the ambassador. Now, why then and there that wasn't an indication for the State Department to tell Ambassador Stevens to stand down is beyond me. But it goes worse. There are actually reports. These are still being corroborated, but there are reports that a pro-Al-Qaeda politician in Libya actually told the brigade to stand down, and this resulted in the utter failure of the defense of the diplomatic outpost. There are a couple of things that they did that evening that are of great concern. The first was that there were 3 brigade members actually stationed at the compound that evening, and they failed to provide any advance notice of a hostile mob approaching, leaving the diplomatic security team that was in place with Ambassador Stevens very little time to prepare an adequate defense against these attackers. The State Department Accountability Review Board actually found that the Martyrs Brigade, which was also on contract as the Quick Reaction Force, failed to show up the evenings of the attack. So there was clearly a very clear line of failure in providing for a defense of the compound from this group, and something that I think with proper vetting the State Department would have been able to find out.
So, Travis, this to me was one of the most important things that you brought to the table here. I tell you, it's extraordinarily frustrating to me. There's a part of me that sometimes feels when leaders are doing a horrible job, I don't care whether it's because they're stupid or they're incompetent, right? Or if it's willful negligence, you just want them out. But we're stuck with this administration for another 3 3/4 years unless Congress really does its job and finds a way to get them out of office. But to me, what you just brought up is an entire pattern that we're seeing of what I'll just call willful negligence. And the fact of the matter is, we have all of these people. These are not difficult things to find out. I mean, if you and I and Brett and so many other people can help uncover this, Why are our intelligence agencies not doing it? And so one of the questions I have for you and the concern that I have here is it seems like there's a battle between the military and the State Department sometimes for who is responsible for providing security to these embassies and or consulates. And it seems to me like this is a complete evidence of the fact that if you put that responsibility in the hands of the State Department, they will lead their own people to the proverbial lamb slaughter for what appears to be obvious political gain. How much of that have you found has come into the thinking of, or I should say, the evidence that you've been able to uncover here?
Sure. Well, let me just give you a little bit of background on who this militia actually was. We've established that they very clearly failed in providing their basic security at the compound. Let me give you a couple of reasons why I think this is more than just poor performance on behalf of the security forces, and something that could have been discovered by the State Department with even a cursory Google search, and something I'm amazed wasn't raised as a concern in the vetting. The militia, so the February 17th Martyrs Brigade, were actually started in February 17, 2006. They actually were formed to attack an Italian consulate in Benghazi as a protest. There was actually an Italian politician that a couple of days previously he was wearing a suit in an interview and had opened up his shirt underneath his suit to show a T-shirt depicting an image of the Prophet Muhammad. Obviously a figure that's very sacred to Muslims and one that is against their religion to depict. This was during the height of the Dutch cartoon protests that were going on, but basically the Italian minister's point was he was saying, I will respect your speech when we respect ours. Basically, this was kind of a protest against some of the ways that some of these extremist groups have been using violence to try to muzzle and force into political correctness and limit the speech that Western nations can engage in. As a result, after prayers on the 17th, there was a large group that were organized by this Martyrs Brigade that went to the Italian consulate and started attacking them. The Libyan police were actually needed to use tear gas and eventually fire into the crowd, and they killed 11 folks, hence the Martyrs part of the February 17th Martyrs Brigade. Several years later, February 17th, 2011, 5 years actually to the day, this anniversary was used to spark the Day of Rage that started the Libyan civil war and the eventual overturning of the Gaddafi regime. So these are not pro-American forces. These are folks that have a very strong anti-Western, anti-American sentiments. And the question is, was it a lack of oversight in the State Department? Was it willful blindness? Was it some need to engage in some sort of political correctness or outreach? Or why were these people hired to perform security when there's so clearly are a number of reasons why they weren't the proper forces to carry this out?
It's very interesting that what you just said, Travis, because it explains why we've seen weapons move throughout North Africa and other places so quickly into the hands of all these al-Qaeda-type organizations. It's crystal clear what was going on here.
Oh, it's interesting you say that, actually, because if you look at the first draft of the talking points, again, one of the bullets that was taken out that was scrubbed by Mike Morell, who was the CIA deputy director, on the behest of Victoria Nuland over at the State Department, was a point that said the wide availability of weapons and experienced fighters in Libya almost certainly contributed to the lethality of the attacks. Now, why that wasn't something that the American public needed to know, why that was something that the State Department, a White House cabinet agency, felt the need to remove from their talking points is beyond me.
Well, first, this follows a very clear pattern, and the irony here is the information that you uncovered about the events pertaining to the Italian consulate, right? This this flies in the face of this entire silly video discussion that they brought up, right? Because it almost feeds into the bad guys pretty much and just gives them an excuse for what they're doing anyway, when the real conversation to be had here, I thought the Italians, maybe it was risky, maybe you could argue it was foolish given its location, but I think it was brilliant to bring up the fact that, look, if you want respect from others, if you want us to respect your opinions, you're going to have to respect ours. If you think it's okay to behead us for simple words, then don't expect us to hold any respect for you or your version, either your religion or at least your twisted version of that. So the question that this begs to be answered is, who hired this brigade in the first place, and did they hire them with the awareness or the knowledge of what happened, that the Martyrs Brigade was actually involved in this attack on the Italian embassy?
Now, that's something that I think we need to get to the bottom of, and I think the only way ultimately to do that is to have a Congressional Select Committee of Benghazi. I think Speaker Boehner had it right with the IRS scandal, and I think I want to extend that same sentiment to what happened with Benghazi. I don't want to know who's getting subpoenaed. I want to know who's going to be getting indicted. There's a regional security officer that has not been allowed to testify, and the 5 State Department diplomatic security officers have also been muzzled by the State Department and by this administration. Why won't they let them speak? I think until we can hear them speak, hear about their interactions with the brigade, hear about some of that background, we're not going to be able to get to the bottom of it. Disjointed, limited releases of emails, basically because the administration was forced to, because folks like Stephen Hayes over at the Weekly Standard and Eli Lake over the Daily Beast have been doing some great reporting on these issues, basically forced them to release the emails in their entirety. So we can keep chipping away at this, or the administration can come clean and Congress can call these people to testify and call the administration to get to account and get to the bottom of it. But ultimately, until we do that, I think we're going to be kind of grappling and getting it piecemeal where and when we can.
Well, exactly, and so be it if the Democrats and liberals want to pretend that this is a Republican witch hunt. At the end of the day, I like, even if I disagree with people like Chris Matthews, I want to see an aggressive left and right press corps. I want to see them go after whoever's in office. I want to constantly see pressure on our elected officials because we deserve better governance. And here's the shame. You look at, have you once heard anybody ask or even discuss, for example, on Fox News, who takes a lot of heat for keeping the story going, have you ever once heard them ask or discuss whether any of these 4 people who were slaughtered, remember there were others who were severely injured, one who I understand is still in critical care in the hospital, have you ever had anybody discuss what their affiliation was, either religiously or, of course, politically? No, because they're Americans and we need to protect them. And what we have is, this has sort of been a Sergeant Schultz. Eric Holder has basically been playing the I know nothing game, as has everybody else in there. And fortunately, we at least have in Darrell Issa somebody who's aggressively questioning. But I worry that they won't keep the pressure up because we have a right to know, and we need to know this, and it can't be left up to folks like you to figure this out.
Yeah, I think that's correct. I mean, if nothing else, these emails have clearly shown us that Jay Carney, surprise, surprise, has not been telling the truth from the White House. He speaks about minimal White House engagement, and you look through these 100 pages of emails and you see the State Department and the National Security Council very, very active, to the point where, after some concerns were expressed, there was an email sent from Jake Sullivan that said, "I will work through this with Tommy," referring to the National Security Council spokesman. The other reason that they give is that there was some concern with impeding the FBI investigation. With the FBI chimed in on that chain, saying that they had no major concerns with the talking points and made only one very, very minor stylistic edit to the talking points. So the blame game keeps shifting around because this is inherently a political organization that tried to cover this up because it happened before an election and they were trying to win an election. So instead of good governing, they were worried about good politics.
I think you're spot on. There's one question I have for you, and I haven't seen much come out of this at all. In fact, you're one of the first people who's really brought his name up much at all recently, is David Petraeus. So we like to think of David Petraeus as an American hero for his valiant efforts during the war, but the timing of his demise and the position that he held and the election cycle, it just does not seem like any of that is coincidence. So is there anything else that you have or that you can share regarding Petraeus?
That is a very interesting question and one that is developing. David Petraeus, he was actually on most email chains and was pretty quiet right up until about the end, when the final draft of talking points, which was whittled down to 3 very, very small, useless type points, said, frankly, and I quote, frankly, I just assume not use this. He knew that these talking points were useless. He knew that they were not going to be adequate for the House Select Permanent Committee on Intelligence, who were requesting them for any other appearances, and he was actually concerned putting the CIA's name on this document because this was not a piece of work that he thought was adequate of coming out of the CIA. But for some reason, they still made their way out and still received the approval of the CIA director. I have seen some reports, questioning whether or not there was knowledge of the affair that was happening, and there was coercion. I've heard, some other theories, some concerns about political future for General Petraeus. All of those, I think, are still too early. There still isn't enough information out about that to really pass any judgment one way or the other on any of those. But again, these are things that we could get to the bottom of if we were to have a select committee on Benghazi that can investigate these kind of questions.
Yeah, Travis, I have a few things for you just before we wrap this up. And I think they could be probably explained if we were to investigate this a little further. We have 3 scandals now, and I'm sure there are others that are going to come to surface if we give enough time. But if we were to take the president's BlackBerry, for instance, and really start to follow the communication chain, the one that we haven't followed, and I guess look at all the personal emails as he's looking at, AP's personal emails. But it seems to me there were many agency heads or advisors to the president who were communicating off the grid. We don't know what's going on, but I think if we really investigated this, we would find out things that would surely make something like Watergate look small. And so that's the first thing. The other thing is, it seems to me that the media did a very good job, not just on this, but since this president has taken office, of almost making him like the Teflon Don. Nothing sticks to Obama. There's always an excuse for, it's always somebody else that was responsible. Even though I'm president, it never comes to me. It never comes to my chief advisors. And then the final thing, Travis, is Hillary Clinton is most likely going to run for president in 2016. How in the world this won't stick to her and be such a black flag and just a huge mark on her time in state that she shouldn't even be able to run for that office. But she will, and the media will support it. And I think that's the shame of this whole story.
Well, that's quite a few questions there. I'll take
Yeah, I know.
As far as the administration scandals and going through emails and things like that, I think you're right. I think as we start investigating the IRS scandal more deeply, as we start investigating Benghazi more, and as things keep coming out, and as we start working our way through the AP wiretaps, I think it's going to become more and more apparent that the level of involvement is going to be much deeper. Just like we're finding out now with Benghazi, the level of involvement by the administration is going to be much deeper than Jay Carney has initially told us. So I think we've already seen a resignation from the IRS, and I think we're going to continue to see a few more as these scandals keep developing. As far as the media being and Obama the Teflon Don, I think the Justice Department made a very major miscalculation in going after the Associated Press and wiretapping their phone lines for 2 reasons. First of all, it's received bipartisan condemnation. You've got Senator Schumer now pushing, I believe it's Senator Schumer or Senator Sanders, one of the two, but a Democrat leadership in the Senate now pushing for a revised media shield law, one that shields the media further from such acts as these wiretaps. And the administration has also started to effectively turn the media against them. You know, they may have been allied, but he has now gone after them directly, and I think that has really taken away a lot of the goodwill that the administration would have had with the media. And I think, frankly, now they are upset, and they're going to be looking for ways to make up for this basically attack on the independent media. And I think they will do that by investigating much more aggressively than they have before these scandals. I think you've already seen it in the questioning in the press room over the past few days of the White House. As far as Hillary 2016 is concerned, I think you're right. I think this is a big albatross around her neck, and one that's going to be difficult to come back from. I frankly almost wish that she gets the nod, so that she's frankly an easier candidate for a Republican to run against, almost a damaged good candidate. So, I mean, you saw the 3 a.m. ad. I don't know if you saw the 3 a.m. ad that the RNC put out, that the Romney campaign unfortunately ultimately spiked, but it's the question that's going to come up, and Crossroads, Carl Rose Group did another version of this recently, basically saying the 3 a.m. phone call came, Hillary Clinton was there, or I mean, you could say, I guess she picked up the phone, but for all intents and purposes, she was not there when the phone rang. She did not protect her own. She did not protect American interests, and because of her incompetency, you know, Americans died. So the question then becomes, is this who you want in a commander-in-chief? And I think that's going to be something that will definitely be weighing on her for the next couple of years, and if she decides to run in 2016.
Well, all great points. Well, Travis, thank you so much for taking your time today to go over all these very important details on what transpired before, after, and during Benghazi. Again, people could find Travis at, could you provide your website for us?
Sure. www.millennial, MILLENNIALDC.com.
Excellent. Again, Travis, thank you so much, and we look forward to speaking to you again soon.
Thanks. Glad to be here.
All right. Take care.